Okay, Onur, lovely to spend some time with you today on Founders Unmasked.
Great to be on here, Tom. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I just want to jump straight into this. One of your goals um, coming out of high school was to be James Bond.
That's right.
Tell me more.
So, I was born in the mid 70s and going into the 80s. We saw a lot of crazy stuff go down. I was originally born in the Middle East and lived in Europe for a while before coming to the States. So, the most high speed dude you could be at the time was James Bond, man. He had the cars, the
Which
excitement,
Bond?
the
Which
job.
Bond? Roger Moore or Pierce?
Roger,
Okay.
1000%.
Yeah. Okay.
And really tried to have that BMW that could swim underwater too. But all of the toys and the technology was a great display of how to make technology your friend while doing ninja missions all over the world. So that seemed very enticing.
And what was it about James Bond that made you think you could make it true? Like if it's a goal, you might actually think you can get it. So what was it about you that was like, fuck, I could actually be James Bond? Was there a
Right.
moment
So I
or a
think it was
story that was like, sometimes it was like, oh, I didn't get the girl, so I guess I'm gonna have to be James Bond now. You know what I mean? Like, what was it?
well, I was always a bit of a jock that was also a major geek, right? So it's this unique category of human being where you're amongst the tribe of the athletes, but they also realize that you're a brainiac that was let in there by their grace. And it goes the same way with all the super smart kids in school, right? They let you in there knowing that you're some kind of a freak of an athlete, but you can actually hold an intellectual conversation with them. So, walking between those two worlds and having absolute irreverence for all of them made me identify with the James Bond character because, again, there's a vast difference between elitism and being elite. And to me, James Bond was not an elitist, but was just elite, just got the job done, was an irreverent of all the conventions around him.
So you saw James Bond as someone that could stand between those two completely different high-powered classes and still be himself, from what I can. I said, okay.
Indeed. I
Or
really
maybe a
saw.
better way is play it his own way. Like he didn't really succumb to being the best, like wanting to be a top intelligence officer, and he didn't really succumb to being the best playboy. You know, he's sort of in this weird genuineness.
Well, there's an old saying around a lot of military special forces, both in the U.S. and Australia, even and abroad, um, that bad boys make good men, and he was a great illustration of that. You might not toe the line exactly to please all the bureaucracies you work for, but you might be extremely respected in your field and actually get missions done and get jobs done that others might not. And you're right. There's a sincerity and genuineness about that that was very attractive to me.
And you know, as you're in between these two groups, did you ever find yourself as a mediator between the two?
Yes, quite often I was able to connect dots and see a greater picture where individual classes of people that they put themselves in, their personal tribes got in the way of seeing where they could work together and resolve things. So quite often, whenever I approached the situation, it was with deductive reasoning, the scientific method, followed by knowing the human spirit and what you can do physically to overcome great challenges. But between heart, mind, and emotion, there, um, we can usually find a solution, whatever we're dealing with as human beings.
So it seems like you got a rounded view of the human condition, but just to stay in the question I asked you, did you find yourself having to mediate?
There was some mediation, I would say, along the lines of, in high school and college.
That's where we want to stay. Let's stay in high school.
High school and college. That's where you did some mediation. Where it later on in life made sense for me was um, when I was an enlisted Army soldier in the Army National Guard while going to college in Missouri. And then later on, I was very briefly in the Marine Corps as an enlisted Marine, and trying to explain to my colleagues how management works and how executive decision making works and liability works and things like that. So, in many ways, yes, I've been a mediator between those, let's say, in the managerial class and those versus the enlisted or actually, boots on the ground class quite a few times throughout my life.
Okay. Okay. So let's stay in high school.
Sure.
You're you're in these two groups of people that traditionally don't like each other. Did they like each other at your school or didn't?
No, I actually
They
my
avoid each
family
other like a
traveled
plague.
around a bit. So in most of the schools I attended, they did not necessarily like each other.
Right.
It was funny though. Like I played football throughout high school, American football, and there was always a small crowd of people that were extremely connected throughout the advanced placement classes and all the sort of uh, more academically oriented side of their personality, even within a football team where everyone else was perhaps in more general education or even other things. So it's like any other culture. There are subcultures within it, and I think to be successful at anything and be a part of any team, you have to be able to navigate between those cultures and be amicable to all.
Amicable
Of course.
is a very
Yeah.
strong word. Look, I want to come back to amicable soon. So I just want to stay in this mediator role. So you're between these two groups of kids that don't like each other. There are a few smarties that that straddle this sort of Rhodes Scholar of fitness and academics. Why do you think you were the person that was asked? Why did you get the mediator role? Why do you think the world gave it to you? Have you ever thought about it?
You know,
It sounds like it's happening in more than one place from what you just
it,
said.
it, it happens quite a bit because ultimately, um, I feel like there isn't a bully that I've met that I've ever feared. And I feel like I can actually take the time to listen to various sides of an argument, let's say. And ultimately, to be able to have a communication, you have to pretty much lock down the space and say, okay, this is going to be an exchange and not one person totally bowling over the next. So I can usually hold my own space if I feel like it's worth holding. And
So you have a
a lot of times
natural
when
inclination. You're a bit of an individual. You don't.
Well, I just like to take initiative. If I see something that's at an absolute impasse and I have a solution for it, I'm going to go ahead and present that solution and take initiative and find a way through. I don't believe in letting things fester and grow in a bad way. So, a lot of times people are afraid to step in or present a solution. Whereas I feel like if I see one, it's almost a duty to present it.
Hmm. So the duty to present all solutions, and not be swayed to bullies. So it sounds like to me the mediator role just felt quite natural to you. You weren't you didn't feel isolated, that you weren't really a member of each group. You were this guy that could be an in-betweener.
Yeah, to me, it's like not ever meeting a stranger, right? There's something in everyone that you can relate with. And if you can get down to the core reasons why they are taking the stances that they are, there's probably some relativity there to work off of and actually be able to be a mediator. So it's not that I was isolated, it's that I was, deeply involved with both sides and having friends on both sides, let's say, of a camp. And most often that's the area where you can be a true resolver of conflict, right? Because at the end of the day, for conflict to happen, two objects have to travel in an intersecting vector. So if you could be the person that sort of opens the door one vector can actually keep moving in its own direction without interference, then you've done a service to both, and there's no conflict.
It's less safe though, right?
It's most efficient. I'm not sure by what you mean by safe. I mean, safe is a
Well,
relative
you're
term.
not in it. You're in sort of in between the tribes. You're mediating them. You're having a positive perspective on there's always more to engage with on strangers. The idea that no one's now a stranger. But you're
Right.
also not a banner lord. You know what I mean? You're not minted in a way. Like you're never fully in, right? So
Right. Unfortunately, when it's
I would see
tribal
that
like
as a
that,
little unsafe. Like you're a frontiersman like James Bond. James Bond is like hated by the British government 90% of the time. Do you know what I mean? It's sometimes the enemy likes him. Every time the enemy tries to convince him to join his team, like there's a real lack of safety if you're not fully in on either side. You never thought of that? It never felt unsafe?
I think fundamentally my loyalty is to the truth, as I see it, right? So it is most likely one of the main reasons why I haven't carried on in a massive corporate security career or carried on in the intelligence field, because ultimately, unless you're tribal and you choose to follow the ways of those tribes fully intentionally, you don't get to move up in those circles. And when you don't, you can either take the status quo or you can start your own business, which is what I did. Because at the end of the day, it's not safe. It's not tribal, but I feel like I owe my greatest loyalty to right and wrong and the truth, the way I've been raised.
And loyalty to the truth is something that seems to define you, but it also could be something that's unique to you. What do you mean by that? Like, what do you really mean by that? How do you explain that to a simple layman like me?
Loyal to the truth. Ultimately, if there are things that you notice that could be improved upon, ultimately there's going to be someone that could take that as a criticism, and they might take that personally as opposed to logically. Ultimately, people, they want to be rational and logical in business and governance and security and all these important matters, but we're emotional beings. So if you approach it like a Vulcan with pure logic and you break it down for them and you leave them it's full checkmate logically, ultimately they could have an emotional response to that and speak of disloyalty or not necessarily take that objectivity as an advantage, but more of a criticism. So that's something I've been trying to
Sounds
figure out.
like that you're always loyal to the idea that people and things can be better than what they already are.
Yes, I believe in process improvement, and I believe in human improvement and personal improvement.
Improvement is what you mean. Everything can always be improved. Okay. And what's the enemy of that?
I would say the greatest enemy that is, or two things. One is denial. If people are like a lot of people take oaths or a lot of people swear to protect things, right? If you truly take that to heart and you're not complacent with yourself and your self-discipline when it comes to those standards, then you're probably a lot less likely to be lazy about correcting things that don't meet those standards. So at the end of the day, I would say the first thing is complacency and denial, in holding yourself accountable for the things that you've chosen to be responsible for. And that is a greater loyalty, almost in sort of like in a samurai way, to the task at hand, than it is to yourself, right? Because you have to be humble and you have to be self-critical to be able to constantly improve. So a lot of people aren't willing to do that. They'd rather either accept the status quo or shove shortcomings under the rug as opposed to come up with a true solution to better themselves and their situations.
Right. And have you ever lost to complacency and denial? Like, has your purity of the focus on improvement is paramount? Have you ever been beaten by your foe?
So yes, early on in business, this is the second enterprise that I've started. Our
Okay.
first independent business was a site development and disaster recovery company, and although I was very risk averse and knew I had limited resources to take chances with. Early on, I trusted subcontractors. I trusted, um, people that I knew within my personal circle to be part of management, and really thought that goodwill on my behalf would get me through. Unfortunately, business has a way of teaching you things in a very harsh manner. And um, after seeing lackluster performance from all of those parties, I came to learn how to protect my business, how to protect my enterprise, how to take the time in selecting the people that I bring into a business, and also how to very clearly define the vision of what we're out to do.
Mm. And what did you learn about yourself? Just at a simple level, not at a founder level. There was some very, that was a founder crucible if I've ever heard one. But yeah, what did you learn about yourself?
I learned that I'm extremely resilient, and resilience is one of the fundamental factors of well-being in life.
Hmm.
Our first government contract that we won as a site development company, we took on 535 acres in a wetland to clear it out with hand saws, literally, in a preserve. Well, that was where the subcontractor left us in the water and ripped us off for 50% of the revenue in the first month of a 90-day project. And then near the end of the project, I actually had two 70-foot pine trees fall on me across my spine and burn me into the ground. Um, Now, most people would say that would be the point to sort of shut everything down, but I felt personally responsible for the government contract. I felt responsible for the few people that I did employ and the families that I did feed, including my own. And just the fact that I had said that I would accomplish something, um, and had committed to it. I just could not turn away from that. So, what I learned through all of the pain and darkness that came with that, including partial paralysis for a couple of weeks, was that um, you have to build resilience into all of your systems, whether those are your personal systems, your body, your health, your family, relationship resilience. You also have to build it into your business when it comes to liquidity, credit lines, capacities, and ways to hedge yourself. Because if you really have a longer term time horizon, which is one of the key factors people should consider in any risk, then resilience really has to be foundational. So when we came back around and started working back in disaster recovery, specifically around security and critical infrastructure security, I can help but hear the resounding message over and over and over again that every once in a while you might not see the things that are coming and get absolutely slammed deep inside the earth. But you have to be able to get back up and you have to get back in the fight to make things work out in the long run.
That's pretty epic. You, where does this unquestionable duty come from?
So
This
I would
sense of
say
duty to the people around you. Where is it coming
it's,
from?
I think it always has to come from love, right? If you
Okay.
feel like um, the people that you love are greater than you and you're part of something greater than yourself, then self-sacrifice, I think, becomes easier. I had I lived a very fast, high-speed lifestyle before having children after the age of 40. But the moment I had my first child, I realized, life was about something much greater than myself. And that's when actually the planets really aligned, right? And I started connecting some dots about future generations and why it matters what we do in the short time that we have to be effective in our lives. And right after I got the gift of children, my life was almost taken from me. So coming back into it full force, knowing the things that matter, I decided that, you know what, I know quite a bit about geopolitics. I know quite a bit about finance, and I've had brief exposure to tactical elements. So I wanted to put great guys and gals to work and create a whole different kind of business than what I saw existing between security, contested logistics, and disaster recovery.
Right. Okay.
Keeping it simple, you know?
Yeah, no, well, you seem to be at the precipice again of two groups of people where um, you've got a highly sophisticated um, financial class of people and a highly sophisticated threat. Both have greatly improved their use of technology. Both have created the space that you're in. Do you think moving into your company now that you've really adopted this mediator type character in your work?
You know, I do. I think in a lot of ways, I'm a translator more than anything else.
Okay.
When I sit down with my head of cyber, um, and you know, they speak about red hats and ethical hacking and networks, I have to be the one to go ahead and translate that to my special operations veterans and former SWAT team captains and explain to them in those types of operational terms what they're talking about, in terms of, you know, counterinsurgency or counterterrorism. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, protection, multi-layered protection, is a holistic approach. You know, almost sort of like the layers of an onion that both sides, the tech side as well as the physical side, see. But unfortunately, in modern day security, whether it's red cell testing, penetration testing, or just physical security testing, there's no one sitting there at the helm and putting the two together and going, "Hey, you guys need to work together." Real world attacks don't happen in a vacuum where, oh, we're just going to hack your, you know, your CCTV and your access control. No, the bad guys are coming over the fence as they're hacking. So we felt like it was time to bring everyone to the table, be that mediator, but also come up with the solutions with that blend to meet the real world challenge at machine speed.
Dude, okay. It makes sense to me. You're talking with a lot of conviction as you go through this. Do your customers understand what you do?
We've had a hard time getting our message out because I don't think there are too many private enterprise um, private enterprises that offer this type of a thing, right? In government circles, this is called a fusion center, where someone can take operational intelligence, actionable intelligence collected from the field, from their own trusted sources, turn around, put it through an analysis, and then give a tablet to a decision maker, and then be able to effect out physical results at the end of it. So it's unique in that it's a quick response force as well as a long term risk management company for stakeholders that need to make decisions based on actionable intelligence. And when you combine that with the immense background of our special operations vets and worldwide networks over the last 30 years, well, man, it's almost like having your private sea lift command and a fusion center both in one. So we've been trying to get past the noise and say, no, we're not a security guard agency. We don't do direct action in the traditional way. We're not, you know, uh, warriors of fortune in that matter. But if you have a complex challenge that takes, you know, all the technology that it can bear, plus actual on the ground operational knowledge, then we can bring our project powers to use for any organization.
Mm. Have you ever thought about that people just don't know how to deal or buy from James Bond?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're we still have the faith that what we brought to the world is extremely useful. Um, you know, we've got a little bit of corporate work that's been given to us as a test position that we've fulfilled over the past year
Mm.
very well. We've actually done quite a few pro bono cases in counter human trafficking. Um, just to get to work and
But
actually
it
do
sounds
things.
like they're just not used to buying from someone that can bridge the gap between two unique services. You know, either you're someone that can assess risk, or you're someone that can protect something, right? And you're like this broker between the two. You can have both. So like,
Right.
how much of this is just they just don't understand who you are, man?
I think it's a lot of it. We offer a turnkey solution, and just I believe my history personally sometimes gets in the way because they're like, wait a minute, you are not a Navy SEAL, you're not a Green Beret, you weren't in the FBI. And it's like, no, no, I wasn't. I had a brief time in the military. I got a real peek at those guys and what they do actually do and go through, and have immense respect for them. But I'll tell you, 2 weeks before 9/11, I got licensed as a financial advisor in New York City. And as opposed to going into work that morning at Park and 39th, I called my mentors and told them that I was going to make it because I ran downtown along with a Mogadishu Ranger friend of mine, and spent a couple of weeks down there helping out in the effort. So I was deeply vested in counterterrorism, having gotten a medical discharge out of Marine Corps, having not been able to serve um, my country and humanity in general, and dealing with that specific type of evil. So during 9/11, it kind of pulled me back in. I went back and I served as a financial advisor for a couple of years before separating from that line of work. And then many years later, about a decade later, my father got sick. I had loyalty to my family to make sustainable high income. And I came back to Jacksonville, Florida, and actually joined a major wirehouse, one of the premier wirehouses. And very quickly, I ended up running their overnight team, for equity stock options and deferred comp for Fortune 500 companies. What does that mean? That means that, 24/7 Fortune 500 executives that are stationed around the world have to have a helpline to call when it comes to their finances, their investments, their net worth. And I was able to be a senior specialist in that environment where the decisions that we made, the timing and execution all varied and mattered very much across all time zones. So although I might not have sat in a government fusion center, I was under extreme tight controls with very complicated situations and very difficult executions, probably to close to $1 trillion worth of trades over 6 years there. So I got to see how multinational organizations work, how they communicate, where they drop the ball, and where they do well. And I learned more about the white glove sort of Ritz-Carlton model of service where you anticipate needs before you necessarily get a request for them. So I've got a lot of formal training, and all along the line, man, having had experiences working as a contractor on and off and doing security and executive protection, I still stayed in touch with everyone I was on some teams with. So ultimately, it was really fun to bring it back together and say, okay, I can definitely be the connector, and like you said, be a conduit between all of these moving pieces, and be able to see the overall picture and bring solutions to very complex situations like global rescue or emergency response to security incidents.
Yeah, I feel
Get
like,
excited talking about it.
yeah, no, I can tell. I feel like you're just a bit of a juxtaposition, right? So like, this is maybe why people don't understand. I'm in financial equities, but I'm dealing with shock calling strategy. It's like high risk, low risk career, high risk job, right? So, or I've trained to be this thing, but I'm just going to ditch my job for the next 4 weeks to do this thing for my village. Or I had a fast and loose life, and now I care greatly about children. And everything's about love. It maybe, and it's the same juxtaposition that James Bond is. It's like, well, I'm the most noble pirate, but I'm still a pirate. Right? Like I get it. I have to uphold the rule of the law, but I'm not going to apply any rules in doing so. the double agent. So I wonder if I think a lot of people struggle to understand that you're a real thing that has these real traits and these real rules or protocols. And it's what the problem needs right now, which must be so frustrating. It must be so frustrating. It was what your market problem needs. Are you frustrated?
Absolutely, 1000%. I feel like we get lost in the noise of commercial marketing in a lot of ways, but every time we see a disaster take place, every time we see a security risk, an incident, we know that as a private entity, we could combine with law enforcement and military and defense and the intelligence communities and bring a lot to the table, right? Not only do we have the folks that have the alumni backgrounds from those communities, we also bring an innovation and really a level of nimbleness that government and large enterprise don't have. We've already gone through the myriad of options.
You have to sell to me, man. Just how do you deal with the frustration?
How do I deal with the frustration? I mean, here I am doing a podcast for the first time and coming out of my shell to start screaming from the rooftops, right?
Oh, and how does it feel?
We don't really have time to mess around. Like the threats are real, whether they're environmental or sociopolitical. And the current state of security is an absolute freaking joke. Threats are moving at machine speed, and people are still hiring unarmed guards that sleep on the job. So, but we're light years ahead of that.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
So
we're joking.
Your hope is that you're going to put yourself out there personally more.
Well, I'm the public face of an organization that's going to do very well in keeping its personnel confidential. At the end of the day, we deal with real bad guys who don't like people getting in their way. But right now, the security industry as a whole charges massive amounts of billable hours to their clients for human unarmed guards whose job is to monitor and report things. They are literally instructed against intervening. Most of them wouldn't have the intestinal fortitude or the skill set to do so. Whereas we say, okay, you can replace that expensive solution with modern technology that's almost 100% accurate in monitoring and reporting. And the massive savings you gain from that, you can use towards either improving your enterprise in other ways or actually having competent and extremely professional response on site. And just like in medical triage and criminal triage and counterterrorism, there is a golden hour. And within really the first 6 minutes, if not the first 10 minutes of an incident, is when you have to have on-site response to avoid horrible tragedies. So we feel like we have the technology in the world. We have the various, best in service providers as partners. Why aren't we using this? Well, most of the enterprises that we talk to say, oh, we're not ready for change like that, or oh, it hasn't been tried and true, but they don't even slow down to take a look at what has been tried and the cases that have been proven.
Do you think if you told people where the James Bond stuff comes from and the idea that you're a bit of a juxtaposition, but you've always found that you mediate between two complex, closed down groups, your clients will understand you more?
I think so. I think it would be less of them trying to put me in a box and understanding that I can see multiple sides of an issue and I'm there to give them perspective and be a conduit of information. A lot of times, I feel like the things we point out, even as gently as we can, um, especially those in leadership or in C-suite or in politics, will take that as almost an offense, right? Because we're pointing out gaps that they should have seen themselves. But realistically, those are the folks you want as your advocates, the ones that show you your blind side and things that could really, bite you in the ass. And if they also come to you with solutions at the same time and a host of them to pick from, that's pretty much a layup scenario. I don't see how it gets better for leadership.
Mm. And my take is, man, that it feels like you spend a lot of time justifying yourself as you respond to your frustration. Is that what's going on? And what you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, our one client right now uses traditional armed guard services just as a quality leader. And it's extremely frustrating to continue to sort of scream into the wind or scream into an echo chamber going, hey, we have better stuff that works, and not really hearing anyone else respond. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll continue to raise awareness, because I think as situations increase and volatility increases, um, in various unfortunately violent criminal situations around the U.S. and elsewhere, people are starting to realize there need to be some better solutions, and everything from brick and mortar traditional solutions to super high tech AI speed solutions exist. It's just a matter of taking the initiative.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, my suggestion really simply is you don't need to justify why you're the right guy for this problem by why you're different. You just need to tell them the story about how you've always been the mediator and your goal is to be James Bond. Because, to me, I think I just don't think you need to. All of those guys that do this work, that are all those guys, they're all rule followers. And I think what the problem that you're trying to solve really needs is someone that understands why codes and conduct is really important, but we almost need to break the rule book on what security is in order to actually solve the problem. And to me, you're that guy. So I wouldn't even play anyone else's game. Play your own. Like James Bond.
Well, it's funny you say that because every time I actually take off the filters and post something, I start getting comments like "You're the John Daly of this business," and I won't say it publicly. I get the DMs that say, I'm over here in my office
Keep
laughing
doing
my
it.
ass off."
No more filters. No more filters.
Because
There's a reason why
because
your name's
look, man,
Honor.
there's so much bullshit out there that I call out, and then there are a lot of people that get their panties in a bunch because I'm
Don't worry
calling it
about it.
out.
Don't worry about
But
it.
corporate America and corporate security, all that rigidity has gotten in the way. They can't see the woods through the trees. So, coming in as an outsider / insider, they really don't know what the hell to do with me. And they don't have to do anything with me. I just need the decision makers to listen so we can actually work with their existing teams and make things better for all of them.
Yeah, there's a reason why you were given the name that you have been given. Right? No more filters.
You got it.
That's it. Look, mate, I appreciate having you here today. I've learned a lot about how you focus on improvement as the only point of truth. That's an extremely helpful tool for anyone listening. I think the idea that there is always potential for things to grow means that we don't focus on killing things off, which can lead to resentment and disgust. So I think that's a great way to live. I also really like your sentiment that that's driven from a perspective of just the idea of loving things unconditionally versus any type of academic model, really. Like, to me, that's quite a genuine thing. So I really appreciate you sharing those two things with me. And man, I don't want to see the filters. Like, you need to tell everyone that's your goal. I want to be James Bond. Like, just tell them it's my dream since I'm being a kid. I'm doing it.
That's it.
The real
And
question
I'm
should be,
sure so.
do you have a James Bond-like problem? If you don't, I'm not your guy. But if you do, then we're your guys. I might sound odd to everyone here, but like, foot in the sand, I reckon you're going to be the guy that does it. Like, I don't, you know.
I think that's the most sincere interview I've had in regards to what we're doing, from any partner. So I can't thank you enough.
I hope so.
Uh,
I hope
because
I
we
hope
do have James Bond solutions for James Bond problems.
that's right. Just tell everyone. It might sound odd, but like you say it enough, it's like, that's my goal. I want to get there. I want to be the guy that upholds the code, but breaks the rule book in doing it. That's who James Bond is. And
Right.
fuck, he looks good while he does it.
Hey,
And it's unconventional. All right, mate. Look, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
thanks so much, Tom. Cheers.